Jurassic Park franchise is one of the biggest, most lucrative, and most groundbreaking franchises of all time, and it's celebrating its 25th anniversary and releasing its 5th entry this very year. As a celebration, in this video I aim to rank all 5 currently released Jurassic movies, including the newly released Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. While I will provide a short summary of my thoughts on Fallen Kingdom, please be assured there are no spoilers here. From the outset, please let me stress that this is a list of my own personal favourites, and not a technical list of the Jurassic movies from best to worst. Mind you, both lists would look fairly similar for me. At that, let's get into it. Here is my personal ranking of the Jurassic Park franchise. Hold on to your butts. Kicking us off at number 5, Jurassic Park 3. After the success of both Jurassic Park and The Lost World at the box office, it was a no-brainer for Universal Studios to greenlight a third and final installment in the Jurassic Park franchise. This time around, Steven Spielberg took a step back as producer while Johnston jumped into the director's chair. The movie went into production as the first Jurassic movie not to be based on a Michael Crichton novel. However, in early stages of production, it was said that both Crichton and Spielberg were working together to come up with the story. Ultimately, however, Johnston discarded these original ideas from the original writer and the original filmmaker, feeling that they weren't in keeping with the original stories and characters that the original writer and original filmmaker had created, and decided to go with a fresh take. In the end, Jurassic Park 3 took a very easy route. It became a movie very little about story and character, and one which focused heavily on bigger, crazier action sequences. So much so that the movie almost ends up being a play-by-play of dino attack sequences, all stitched together to loosely form a narrative, with no effort to drive the franchise into unknown terrain. There are some good moments in here. I've always enjoyed the sequence in the pterodactyl cage, as well as the Spinosaurus vs T-Rex fight scene, perhaps one of the best dino fights in the entire series. I also really enjoy the river raft sequence, as it's one of the only moments in the movie that screams classic Jurassic Park, and even borders on feeling like a Spielberg moment. Mind you, that's no real surprise when we take into account that this was a sequence originally planned by Spielberg for the first movie before being dumped at the last minute because of budgetary concerns. Unfortunately, the movie's focus on action over story, jump scares over stylistic suspense and intensity, an obvious attempt at outdoing those that came before it, dig this movie deeper and deeper into the sedimentary rock. The new cast isn't all that great in this one either, though William H. Macy does a pretty good job and Tayla she's fine. The biggest saving grace of Jurassic Park 3 is easily the return of Sam Neill as Dr. Alan Grant, after taking a leave of absence from The Lost World. Neill's return as Grant is very welcome, but given the shallow material, the character only feels like a shell of what he once was. However, maybe his experiences in the park the first time around could account for that. That said, Neill's reappearance in the movie and even Laura Dern's small cameo as Dr. Ali Sattler certainly don't save this from being the single worst Jurassic Park entry in the entire franchise. So far, at least. 4. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Yikes! Fallen Kingdom is, to me, the most disappointing and lackluster effort in the entire franchise. It's quite easily the most blockbustery of all the Jurassic Park movies, big, bombastic, with non-stop action. Yes, all Jurassic Park movies are blockbusters, but for the most part they've had style and substance. I do think Fallen Kingdom is a slightly better movie than Jurassic Park 3. I really appreciate the movie's heavy use of animatronic dinos, something the first Jurassic World was lacking, and I truly admire the way that this one attempts to move the franchise towards new ground and into new directions for the future, an area Jurassic Park 3 really struggled with. While the majority of this movie just felt like a letdown to me, the ending excited me about the future of the franchise, the new places it could go, the new stories that could be told. Regardless of this, the movie's final moments, while exciting, don't save the entire movie for me whatsoever. This is quite easily the least Jurassic Park movie of the entire series. And by that I mean this movie, while trying to move in new directions, goes so far in some directions that it becomes too much of a departure from what made Jurassic Park so special in the first place. Where the heart and soul of the original movie came from great storytelling, character development, and stylish monster sequences, Fallen Kingdom replaced it with sloppy, drawn-out storytelling, one-dimensional characters, and almost continuous, cheap thrills action, all of which have no class or any of that stylish Spielberg suspense and thrills. My biggest problem with Fallen Kingdom is that it tried incredibly hard to be a movie about dinosaurs. So hard, in fact, that it basically became a schlock horror dino monster flick, and much like Jurassic Park 3, ended up heavily reliant on cheap jump scares over stylistic suspense and intensity. While dinosaurs have obviously always been an enormous element in the Jurassic Park franchise, the original Jurassic Park was never a movie about dinosaurs. It was quite simply a movie about people. People in an extraordinary situation. The human element is what made it such a fantastic story that is incredibly easy to connect with. But in daring to be different, Fallen Kingdom just lost that original idea and that original heart. As a result of this, characters like Owen and Claire, who I adored in the first Jurassic World outing, became shallow and directionless, buried underneath non-stop dino action, adding very little value to the overall movie. I certainly do not hate Fallen Kingdom. It didn't ruin my childhood. It didn't kill Jurassic Park for me forever. It's just that unfortunately, I had very little fun in it, and I tried my absolute hardest. I tried to sit back and enjoy the, to be honest, pretty epic action sequences with incredible special effects. I mean, the volcano eruption sequence in particular is spectacular. But for the most part, I just couldn't find that enjoyment. This just did not feel like Jurassic Park to me. Just generic dinosaur blockbuster. And for a generic dinosaur blockbuster, it actually fares fairly well. And had it been just that, I think I would have enjoyed it more. But the fact is, this movie carries that Jurassic Park DNA. And that's something that holds a lot of weight. Something that should be treated a whole lot better. 3. The Lost World, Jurassic Park. The Lost World kind of feels like one of those slapdash sequels that studios throw together on the back of a smash hit movie. Lesser quality, hastily thrown together script, an entirely new cast save for the return of only one major cast member, and another demoted to cameo only. In fact, Lost World spawned from a public pressure for Universal and Steven Spielberg to make a sequel to the smash hit Jurassic Park, and also for Michael Crichton to publish a sequel to his original novel, despite never having penned a sequel to one of his works before. Working somewhat in tandem, Crichton managed to quickly pump out a second novel in only 2 years, and Spielberg managed to create a second movie in an additional 2. Really, not the best way to build a franchise off the back of such an iconic film, but merely a hurried effort to provide audiences with another Jurassic chapter with very little forethought. The Lost World at times feels like one of those sequels that so desperately tries to live up to its predecessor and outdo it in every single way possible. And in the process of doing so, sabotages itself entirely. Even Spielberg himself has spoken out of the quality of The Lost World, calling it inferior because he was too confident about it being another slam dunk. But as we seem to be learning more and more these days, time and patience is the only way to build a proper franchise. It's kind of an odd movie, this one. It feels like a movie Spielberg shouldn't have directed, but because he did, it retains a lot of that classic Spielberg feel, even if it doesn't retain that quality. So again, as a result, it feels almost like an imitation. It's entirely commendable that Spielberg did return for this one as director instead of just producer, especially given, much like Crichton, it's not too often that he returns to a world he previously created. Though some rumours may suggest that such an involvement was more of a contractual obligation than anything else. Regardless, despite this movie being fairly lackluster and coming off as a rehash or an imitation, there are some great things in here. I really love the movie's premise. The idea of a second island and a second expedition into unknown land is fantastic, even if not executed all that well. I highly enjoy the return of Jeff Goldblum as Dr. Ian Malcolm, even though I kind of feel that this is a character that only works in smaller doses. And of course, we can't forget some of the movie's most Spielberg-esque moments. There's the T-Rex rampage through San Diego, a sequence which induced nightmares in kids all over the world. The frightening and bone-chilling Compsognathus attack, which still gives me nightmares. And of course, that fantastically suspenseful and thrilling T-Rex attack sequence, where the dinos push the explorer's trailer over the edge of a cliff, and Julianne Moore ends up landing on cracking glass a few hundred feet above the sea. These have gone on to become some of the most memorable moments of the franchise, and in fact, even some of the greatest film moments in Spielberg's entire career. Despite its downfalls, Lost World is still a masterclass masterclass in how to build stylistic and tasteful suspense and terror from one of the only filmmakers able to do it as well as Alfred Hitchcock. Unfortunately though, it's definitely not a masterclass in how to make a great sequel. 2. Jurassic World. Alright, I know Jurassic World gets a bit of a bad rap from some, but this is easily my most guilty pleasure of the entire Jurassic franchise. To me, this is the sequel that Jurassic Park always deserved, even if it is in the form of a semi-franchise reboot, which keeps within the continuity of the previous installments. Jurassic World manages to be its own thing while paying respectful homage to the original movie without coming off as a rip-off. There are plenty of wonderful little Easter eggs, references, and callbacks to Jurassic Park, appealing to the mass nostalgia spawned from it, but in a tasteful way. That said, alongside Fallen Kingdom, it's one of the few Jurassic movies that treads new ground and moves in new directions with fresh ideas, setting up the future of the franchise ahead. And apart from repeating or giving nods to one or two classic moments from the original, it organically builds itself into the universe, managing to recapture the essence and spirit of the original movie instead of trying to recapture it with, by this point, rehashed and overdone ideas. While some may scoff at the idea of new genetically modified dinosaurs, I kinda like it. It may be far-fetched, but it's no more far-fetched than bringing dinosaurs back to life in the first place. And at any rate, DNA from multiple different dino species were originally used to fill in genetic holes in the original dinosaurs all along. The Indominus Rex is easily the most frightening dinosaur in the entire series, next to only Jurassic Park's original T-Rex, who makes a fantastic appearance in this one in an epic fight against the Indominus, a franchise highlight for me, even if it does seem a little bit overblown. If I have one issue with Jurassic World, it's simply that this movie is very much a product of its time, just as Jurassic Park was. And in order to engage a newer audience, the movie relies on heavily overblown CGI set pieces and animals. That's not an enormous problem. I'm big on keeping up with the times and using whatever tricks of the trade you can to tell your story as best as you can, but there was always a charm and a reality to those animatronic dinos that no CGI can ever replace. I mean, the originals did use a combination of CGI and animatronics, and the first one actually revolutionized both to a degree, but they had more of a focus on animatronics over CGI. This one goes in the opposite direction, and in a way, it loses just some of that original Jurassic Park charm. Thankfully, this movie does use animatronics in some of the more emotional sequences, which was an absolutely perfect move. I also really love both Chris Pratt's Owen and Bryce Dallas Howard's Claire. They fit so beautifully in this universe as properly developed characters with great motives, unlike the one-dimensional characters in the previous sequels, which played second fiddle to lesser versions of the original Jurassic Park characters. It's just upsetting that these two seem to have been wasted in Fallen Kingdom. Coming in as my #1 favorite Jurassic Park movie of all time, it is Jurassic Park. Well, it wasn't that hard to tell that the original Jurassic Park would take out my #1 spot in this list. In fact, I think you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find nearly anyone who would rank it any lower. Jurassic Park is one of those classic Steven Spielberg movies that grabs you by the heart, shakes you up a little bit, and never quite lets you go. It's the perfect balance between fiction and reality, absolute terror and beautiful heart. The thing I've always loved about Jurassic Park is something I've mentioned constantly throughout this video already, and that's the way that Spielberg managed to take a movie which appeared to be a monster flick on the outside and filled it with so much humanity, heart and soul on the inside. While dinosaurs form the setup for this story, the true focus are the people at its center. This is a movie about humanity and how humanity reacts when it's forced to face up to its past, threatened by an unnatural balance in evolution, and it's crafted with such incredible mastery. This is why Jurassic Park became so successful and why it's become one of the most beloved monster movies ever made. Simply because it's not a movie about monsters at all, but a movie about people, allowing the audience to have such a deep connection with it. It's the same way people have such an affinity to classic universal monsters like Dracula, Frankenstein, and Phantom of the Opera, which put heart and soul front and center. The same way Star Wars became so enormous because it's so much more than just a movie about spaceships. Jurassic Park is one of Steven Spielberg's many masterpieces. Unlike any other filmmaker with the exception of Alfred Hitchcock, Spielberg is able to piece together a stylistic, gripping thriller that keeps your attention every step of the way. There's no cheap jump scares here, in fact there's barely any real scares at all. Spielberg sets up a scary or frightening atmosphere in what we don't see, not in what we do see. It's not a fear of dinosaurs, but a fear of the unknown. Take the T-Rex chase sequence. It's not the arrival of the T-Rex that's frightening, it's how the arrival is set up. Dark, gloomy atmosphere. A feeling of unease. The presence of the monster made visible only in the rippling of water before she even makes her presence visible. We are not privy to anything the characters in the movie aren't privy to. We see it from their perspective as if we're right there with them. It's one of the most incredible and engaging sequences ever put on screen, and it's perfectly exemplary of a stylistic formula that made this movie so frightening and so exciting. A formula that this franchise somehow lost along the way. The movie is built not only around Spielberg's impeccable understanding of visual storytelling, but around a soundscape unlike any other heard before it. Jurassic Park was the first film to use the DTS surround sound system, which Spielberg even invested in for this movie. It is still, to this day, the only soundtrack that has ever overloaded my amplifier. True story. Jurassic Park was also a revolution in terms of special effects, with George Lucas's ILM creating groundbreaking CGI that would set a benchmark for not only his future Star Wars movies, but blockbuster cinema in general. The movie's use of animatronic creatures was revelatory also, with sheer size and scale unlike anything ever seen before, allowing actors to interact with real, living, breathing creatures, adding an extra level of humanity to the movie overall. There is also, of course, fun performances all round, but none that really stand out above the rest, except maybe Jeff Goldblum's eccentric Dr. Ian Malcolm. This movie, however, isn't about one character. It's about the entire ensemble. And of course, we can't forget that exquisitely crafted score by master composer John Williams, who provides one of the most fearsome, most beautiful, most euphoric scores ever recorded. Hearing that Jurassic Park theme blasting, how can one not be filled with absolute wonder? Jurassic Park is not only my favourite movie in this series, but one of my favourite movies of all time. It's not only a spectacularly crafted movie, but one I find myself relating to on a deeper, more human level, and one whose sheer wonder I can continuously go back to and continuously be amazed and terrorised by over and over again. When all's said and done, it's no wonder none of the others have lived up to it, because it really is a perfect movie. And at that, we come to the end of my personal ranking of all 5 Jurassic Park movies. Agree with what I had to say? Disagree with all of it? Let me know your personal thoughts and rankings down below. If this is your first time viewing my channel, you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it in the future, then please hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen right now and hit that like button down below. Also, don't forget to check out my many social media accounts and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Until next time guys, take care and I hope you have a wonderful day.